Hello and welcome to the sixth video from week 11 of my graduate seminar, Sound Advanced Topics 2. In this one, we're going to have some fun. I've got a little keyboard-based app, keyboard that you play like a piano, that uses open sound control to then control some things in Unity. It's kind of fun. I'm not going to spend time typing the code. I'm just going to kind of walk you through everything. So let's see what we've got going here. Let's bring up, first of all, I want to show you the max patch that is basically taking the keyboard information and sending it out over UDP send, which is the open sound control object. There it is. What happens is it takes MIDI coming in. MIDI parse then strips out different forms of MIDI data. What I'm getting here is the key number and the velocity. And the velocity in MIDI is a velocity between 0 and 127 for a note on, and then a 0 for a note off. So instead of getting two messages of my key number sent, I use the 0 to gate it just so I get the note on. And then I clear it when I get the note off. So I'm then appending a /key val, or prepending it to the note number. That's the structure I'm going to look for on the receiving end of OSC, and then I send it out. And just to show you how this works, bring up my little screen here. I got my keyboard attached, and you can see that as I play the keyboard, it plays on the max patch. And you could actually just play that keyboard directly if you wanted to. So if you're at home and you want to try this out, you can actually give it a little bit of a go. Okay, so let's take a look at the Unity receiver for this now. Bring up the Unity project. There it is. All kinds of good stuff are going to happen. I'll tell you what it is in a second. But first things first, let's take a look at what we've got. First of all, we configured this OSC object with the OSC script. I'm listening to port number 7778 on my local host, and that was also the case that I was broadcasting on 7778 on the local host. So that should be set to get the data into Unity. And let's trace what's happening by looking at this OSC control object, because that's the thing that's receiving the OSC data, and that's where all the action gets kind of happening. Here's the code. I have obviously the OSC object that I'm going to use to configure my message handlers. Then I have this array of spheres. Talk about that later. And I've also got this object called the note player, which I'm finding out in the real world. These are public, so I'm going to find them just by dragging them in. You probably saw that already on the editor interface. And first thing I do is I get a handler for those key val messages, and it's the get key function. And there it is, right there. It gets a message. What's happening? Well, this time I'm getting an integer. It's a key number. Now, MIDI key numbers starts with 60 as middle C. And I'm just going to take that first octave there. So that means that I'm going to get numbers 60, 61, 62, up through 72. I'm subtracting 60 from them to get an index. That will then be 0 through 12. And I have some protection here if I play a key outside that. And based on that index, I'm going to have one of my spheres do a sphere hop. And I'm going to have the play note function of my note player play, I'm adding the 60 back in, whatever the MIDI note number was. All right, well, let's look at this sphere hop first. Let me show you something out here on the interface. What I did was I created a public array in here. Notice that my spheres is an array. This allowed me to take a bunch of spheres, bunch of copies of spheres, and essentially drag them in to this array. So now I've got element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up through element 12, spheres of 12. We'll refer to each one of those spheres separately. That's how I'm going to be able to address each one from a specific MIDI note number. Okay? And on this spheres, I have a script called spheres. And let's take a look at that script. Okay? This is kind of fun. I'm doing something a little bit different in terms of making them move. Here's that function that's been called sphere hop. Notice that I attached a rigid body component to each of the spheres. You can see that on the interface if you want on the editor. And I get that component, and I'm doing this thing. I'm adding a force. I'm not doing a translate or a transformation or a transform or anything like this. The rigid body allows me to use the unity physics to give it a force. And in this case, I'm giving it a force of 20 in the y dimension. And that was just done by experimenting. And you'll see what that does is it causes the ball to hop up and then kind of hop back down. So every time it gets a note, it's going to trigger one of those spheres. All right? Next thing that happens, of course, is the note player, calling the play note function. Well, here's the note player code, and it's the basic RTCmix stuff, up to here. It sends a score. All it does is create an amplitude envelope. Then this public function called play note will receive a MIDI note, and it will send a score for this banded waveguide instrument. You can look that up. 3-second duration and amplitude times the amplitude envelope. And then I'm taking this MIDI note that I'm receiving and stripping out the value, so that'll get inserted into the RTCmix stream here. And I'm converting it from MIDI to cycles per second, which is what banded waveguide wants to see, and I send it off. So when I call play note, it should play that note of that MIDI note. Okay, and basically that's all there is to it. Okay, so let's, I'm saying okay a lot. I should stop. Let's go ahead. Okay, we've got our port listening. Let me bring up my screen here so you can see me play this keyboard. And with any luck, we'll start up our MIDI stuff. And let's bring this over here so we can see it too. And now as I play, whoa, you can see that key hop. Ooh, sent that one way up high. So that's our little application that we made. Not too difficult, but shows you there's a whole world of possibility with open sound control and some of these cool musical interface things coming in. I think what I'm going to do finally for this week's class is turn this into an application, standalone application. So stay tuned.